like I want to dig into like maybe one or two stories that you might have around some assets that you have seen that look good from the get go. And I know that we've mentioned this one that I just mentioned. You also mentioned the power plant one. But do you have any others where you're like, oh, looks good, but hang on, no, like there's this that we should run away from?
Good entry into part 2 of this pod where we're talking about the actual asset itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the key things that I guess answer that question is look at the age of the dwelling. There's a lot of risks around those older style buildings, so the 1950s weatherboard, especially in Queensland, where the footing systems are actually decaying over time. So you could buy a house that looks great, you pay $500,000 for it. If you own that for a year or two, and then there's reports of the footings basically decaying, you're going to have to spend around $30,000 to replace those footings underneath that house to keep the stability of the house. That doesn't increase the value at all.
No.
So, and then another thing, the exact same reason, is roofing. So just keep in mind that a lot of the roofing is covered under insurance, so it's great, and the footings can be covered under insurance as well.
Especially if you get a building and pest check.
Yeah, but just make sure your insurer actually covers it.
Okay.
So there's obviously you can't take into that account.
What if you get a building and pest check, and I think this may have happened to you. I think you may have told me a story about this, where you could get a building and pest check and it passes the building and pest check, and then a year later or so, something happens to the building, and it wasn't actually legit approved. Like, can you go to the building and pest inspector and say, hey, you approved this, but clearly it shouldn't have been approved. It's on you to pay for the maintenance.
Yeah, they got insurance for that.
Good.
But different states, different things. So in Western Australia, they're not, they're definitely not covered, or they don't cover those things.
In WA?
In WA. So
lucky my building pest got a lot of things fixed on my last one.
Yeah, but then it also depends on your insurer too. So you got 2 courses of actions. Going through the building and pest inspector would be, and leveraging their insurance. That will be quite difficult because no one ever wants to pay for anything.
Yeah, insurance.
But I mean, that's why you get the building and pest inspection, and they're all covered for those reasons. For those, it has to be a pretty glaring reason as to why it failed. An example in WA, and that's why I say that, is that we had a client that had purchased a property through a different buyer's agent, and the roof the roof line was sagging. So the building pest inspector went through there, looked at the whole property, and ticked it off. But when you went there,
okay. So the roof line, as in like the gyp rock and everything,
it was sagging. And what actually had happened is that the gyp rock had come and the frame.
The frame was sagging.
The frame was sagging.
Whoa!
So what they had done is they went to fix it, which is because the building pest inspector wasn't going to remedy it, and the insurer was like, "Well, you bought it like that." So what they did is the building and pest inspector people, they just went up there and got straps and strapped up the frame back up to the other part of the frame.
No.
And then all hunky dory. And for me, I was like, well, don't, because if you go to sell that property and a good building inspector is going to go through and look at that, they're going to go, well, why is that strapped up? And that's going to deter future buyers. So it was a bit of a interesting scenario that, because I wasn't involved in the purchase, obviously my time was difficult, but you definitely felt bad for the person because they've gone and bought a property that is a potential issue. But yeah, that was kind of my experience with certain things in WA. So answer to your question is, go through the building and pest inspector first, try to do that. If not, then you get your insurance to try and cover it. But it's always a pain in the ass.